So next up, we have Ken Smith, and he's going to talk about guarding Ethereum, helping us from theft.
Thank you very much. So this is a presentation that's talking about some analysis I've been doing and thought about the risks of MEV theft in Ethereum, and this is especially I guess focused on liquid staking pools. These are permissionless staking pools that would use a node deposit to bond a node operator to commit to acting honestly in the Ethereum network. So let's take a look at some of the information. What I wanted to cover today was a little bit about the Ethereum staking concepts, probably speaking to an advanced audience, so I'll go quickly over that. I want to talk a little bit about the problem of MEV theft and some of the strategies used to actually steal MEV, and then spend the majority of the time talking about possible countermeasures or solutions to prevent or mitigate the loss of value to liquid staking token holders from MEV theft. Okay, so this is the current staking rewards, or at least a projected view of staking rewards, right? I just looked prior to coming up here. We're just shy of about 900,000 validators in the Ethereum network. You know, we can all take estimates as to when we're going to get to 1 million validators. But I've written some modeling code in a previous report I did. What we can do is we can kind of predict the two rewards that validators receive, right? They receive the consensus layer issuance rewards from the core protocol for a single validator per year. It's about 0.8 ETH. And then we can predict MEV, at least to some degree. And what do I mean by predicting MEV? One of the things we can do, there's a great data set that's in MEVPix open data that has basically recorded all of the successful MEV produced blocks from MEV Boost and the amount of MEV that it's contained in there. It keeps track of it for the time period between the merge and now. I think it's about 470 some odd days worth of data. And one of the things we could do is we could model it using a Monte Carlo method where we basically say, hey, let's go ahead and choose a value of proposals based upon the probability that a validator will get. And for each one of those predicted proposals in a year, it's about maybe I think 3 proposals a year is what you're likely to get with a validator. Randomly go ahead and select one of those MEV blocks that was produced in the last 460 days. And let's assume that's going to be your MEV for this coming period. Okay. Now, is that going to be true? I don't know. I mean, as transactions move to layer 1, there may not be MEV. It may be different. It could be, as people said, it depends upon the price action and what day. But if you say that past performance on MEV is probably indicative of future performance in MEV, you can make a fair modeling presumption of it. And so what it shows is about 1.2 ETH being produced by a validator. About 28% of that ETH in revenue is coming from MEV. It's becoming a larger significant portion as I think MEV extraction gets more advanced, and as more validators get on, the amount of consensus layer rewards generated becomes less and less. Now there was a recent post here on ETH Research here in here that had actually looked back. It's fairly recent, just in this month, and took a look back over a month or so, and you could see that it basically is about that same rate, even out about 900,000. It's about 25 to 30% of your rewards earned. Okay. Now, when you start to look at MEV, it's absolutely fascinating. This is an updated histogram produced from this modeling code from the MEV Boost Pix open data. And it maybe doesn't really show it too well in pictures, right? But it's most of the blocks have very little MEV in it, right? So you win the opportunity to propose. It's now your time. You successfully propose. Your block's included in the chain. It gets finalized. Woohoo! But the amount of MEV in your block was very small, right? And it's a long-tailed skewed, right? In fact, if you look over here, the The median, right, which means that 50%, you're in the middle of the group. 50% of all the block proposals had less MEV than you. 50% had more MEV than you. You're way down here at about 0.5 ETH per block. The average is substantially higher. It's nearly 3 times higher. And the reason for that is there are these substantially mega large blocks of MEV that we've been calling lottery blocks, right? These are the 200 ETH block that you get, right? The 150 ETH block that's out there. And because there's so few of them, this only ends at 1 ETH, but it continues all the way on to about, what the highest MEV block was 250, 300 MEV, right? It goes a long ways. The problem is they're very, very rare, okay? So, but there's still a strategy that could be taken here. And just to show how kind of rare this is, to look at it in a little bit here, is you could see here that if you're in the 99.9 percentile of it, you're getting a MEV block that's 7 ETH in there. I mean, that's a pretty good return on a proposal, right? But still, there's 14% of all the MEV that was ever extracted above you, right? It's just those mega lottery blocks contain more of the MEV than all of the little blocks combined, okay? So it's substantially long-tailed, okay? This is what makes it pretty interesting. So we've just heard a talk about proposer-builder separation. And we know what that is. We know what MEV relays are. Let me just show one thing that's going to be useful here in a conversation a little bit later here, which is when you register for a MEV relay, not only do you tell it who you are and your signature there, but you give it they actually call for it in the spec, a fee recipient, but it's technically the suggested fee recipient. It's basically the address that you want your MEV to go to. And the one problem in MEV theft is that as you register as a validator, you get to control that address, however you register with the relay. So that's one of the areas for inception to create the attack. Now there's 2 attack strategies, at least that I could think of, and I certainly encourage others to think about some. One of those I call the long con attack. This is one where the validator basically says, you know what, I've formed a validator with a low cost liquid staking pool. Maybe I got an 8 ETH mini pool or a 4 ETH, or now we're just heard in a previous presentation, 1 ETH mini pool or 1 ETH validators are coming out, right? It's very little cost to put in to go chase one of these things. So you could create a long con. And in a long con, you just immediately start stealing. And maybe that protocol has some slashing condition that could take that 1 ETH away from you, or that node deposit away from you. But you can actually predict the amount of time it takes. So these are the amount of returns you earn on a 1, 2, 3, and on 2, 4, 8, and 16 ETH mini pool. This is your share of earnings. And you can see that if you just start stealing the MEV alone, forget the consensus layer rewards, but if you just start stealing the MEV alone, in the case of these lower ones, like 2 ETH, within about 20 years, you're on average likely to exceed more in stealing these even small bits of MEV than what the slashing or penalty is for it, right? So if you're willing to invest, 20 years is a long time, things can change in the protocol. So maybe it's safe, maybe it's not, but it's at least still a strategy that's there. Another strategy that could be used is something called the attack strategy, or the lottery block attack strategy. This is one in which they say, I'm going to continue to act as an honest validator until I win a lottery block. It's rare, but there's a chance that I may win a lottery block. And if I do win a lottery block, I'm going to redirect that MEV to my address and not the staking pool's address. And you can see here that, as you put more and more ETH down, the actual chances of you, A, getting to propose, and B, getting to propose when it's a lottery block, get to be a very large number, right? This one's going to be 500 years. I'd say it's not impossible, but, the likelihood of you actually winning this strategy in your lifetime, not going to happen. But as you get to smaller and smaller deposits, it does become feasible, right? We can see from the data it's better to just start stealing immediately, take your slashing and continue on. But you can make some predictions like this. So, well, why does it matter to steal MEV, right? Well, in a liquid staking pool, a large portion of the funds that are generated from staking are really due to the liquid staking holders, right? They have the largest contribution into the validator. You only have a small share to act as a bond to ensure your honest node operating. So what are some of the approaches that I think are being talked about right now and discussed? One of those is the use of DVT, right? Again, here it takes multiple node operators. The chance that all of them are in collusion to do this is going to be less likely. But again, we have the problem with the MEV relays. When they sign, it was mentioned in the other one, there's like this blinded block. You are just signing a header to the block. And the fee recipient in there is usually not your fee recipient or your staking pool's fee recipient. It's, per the specification, it's the fee recipient of the block builder. You are just promised and trusting of the relay that they are going to send it to your suggested fee recipient. So a malicious member of a DVT cluster or squad could simply just submit, if they're the elected leader to propose, they could submit a block header to the folks, but have the actual block, once it's released, send the MEV to their address. You don't know what you are actually signing in terms of the block contents. So that's one area. And you can actually see this here. This is a recent proposal here, right? You can see the fee recipient and the execution payload. You can actually see, though, that this is my fee recipient to a smoothing pool that I participate in. And again, they don't match up, and it's because they're not supposed to under MEV Boost, right? I'm just promised to sell my block. I'm promised to receive some funds at the end of it. The builder can take the tips on it. Another one that we heard about in there is enshrined proposal builder separation. That might have some possibilities in preventing MEV theft, especially depending upon how they produce it. Right, there's a lot of talk about MEV burn in there, but another way they could do it if they decide to distribute it instead of burning it is they could actually mandate that the fee recipient be the withdrawal credential. And that's most likely to ensure that it goes back to the correct liquid staking pool. You're not able to select or suggest another fee recipient address to send it to. Another approach to maybe countermeasure to this is we could work with the relays. Perhaps there could be a coalition of relays that would actually decide to standardize and make that same change. No longer could you suggest a fee recipient. Instead, they would just simply look up the 0x01 withdrawal credential and send the payment to that address, right? That might cause some problems for existing protocols, but it would certainly counteract the ability to redirect the funds. Another thought that came out, this is one that has been kind of fleshed out a little bit, is when you work in a liquid staking protocol as a node operator, you're usually paid a commission on that liquid staking portion of the validator. Perhaps maybe they pay you 10% as a node operator or 14% as a node operator. One strategy might be to not pay you at all for that thing, but allow you to take all of the MEV for yourself. Now that's interesting because maybe you will win the lottery and get one of those 100 ETH blocks, but most likely you're going to get 3 block proposals at about 0.05 each, and that's going to be very little payment. You gave up almost 1 ETH right now for the chance of winning 100 ETH, but you're most likely to come out with about 0.15 ETH. So I don't know if there be an interest in there. A countermeasure for that is there could be, we just saw that DApp node has a smoothing pool created. There could be smoothing pools for MEV, right? That say, okay, well, I may not win that 100 ETH, but I'll join a pool of common other node operators that are just validating for MEV only, and we'll smooth our pools because likely somebody in the pool is going to win the lottery over some period of time. A similar approach to that is one called smoothing commitments that's up here. This is one that kind of flips that a little bit. Here, instead of actually registering and taking a 0% commission to be a node operator, you're actually bidding on the right for it. You will pay the protocol. They'll say, I'll give you a validator to run for 3 months. There's a signed exit message that will kick you out in 3 months. You place a bet or a bid. Maybe you bid half an ETH, maybe you bid 1, maybe you bid 2 in the back there, and whoever wins that bid has the right to run that validator for 3 months, and you get all of the consensus layer rewards or all of the MEV rewards for that right to bid on it. You can renew your bid. If you don't renew it, they'll force exit you. It's an interesting concept, but I think it has some concerns about centralization. The folks that will bid successfully on this are large people with a lot of ETH that can average their probability of winning. We talked a little bit about using the voluntary pre-signed exits. There's a problem with them right now in Cancun here, and that's that they expire after 2 forks. This is one of the EIPs that's slated to be in Deneb here, which is non-expiring messages. The non-expiring messages will no longer allow that. This is a way that somebody, a node operator, could sign an exit message. I'm validator number 123, I quit, signed here, and you give it to the protocol, and the protocol will hold it. If you act maliciously, they could inject that message and X you out of the beacon chain. The problems there is that it does require a trusted party to store those messages, and there are security considerations, right? Where do they store them? Is it just up in Dropbox? Do they have some secured enclave to store those? Who actually gets to decide when they inject those messages? There's a lot of considerations on that, but this is one improvement I think that's coming out here. The next one here, and this is the one that I really wanted to call the most attention to because I think it's one of the more elegant ones, and I wanted to create awareness about this, is there's an EIP called 7002, which is execution layer triggered exits. It's an EIP. It does seem to have very positive traction among a lot of staking organizations. And what it does is it says right now in Ethereum, only this signing key, only the validation key that you sign every attestation with is the one that you can sign that I quit message. What this proposes is it says, hey, your withdrawal credential that you actually have, the wallet where all of your consensus layer funds go to, it will be able to also initiate a transaction that says, I quit. It has a couple of benefits outside of MEV theft, mainly security, right? You have a separate key that doesn't have to be a hot key that's constantly used, that could be secured. If you have separate owners, you could create smart contracts with that execution or with that withdrawal credential to allow multiple people to execute on that transaction. But more importantly, in the case of this topic for MEV theft, is that it would allow staking pools to go ahead and monitor for MEV theft. Okay, and once they detect MEV theft, they could go ahead and force exit that validator. And if you noticed on all those probabilities of success, there was some period of time. The most likely strategy to use is to immediately start stealing. And if you immediately start to steal MEV, you could be detected within a few blocks, and then you could be forced to exit from the execution layer, creating a pretty robust layer of security to prevent MEV theft on there. That was kind of the quick overview of MEV theft and some of the possible solutions there. And I understand we might have a few minutes for questions.
Questions? Okay, yeah, all
right.
clear. So
Thank you
very much, and let's prepare for the next speaker.